This game actually broke me. During the course of beating Armored Core 6, I died hundreds of times. I had to completely rebuild my entire mech and experiment with different builds about 50 different times. At one point, I got stuck on a single boss for 2 hours. But I mean all of this as a compliment. Armored Core 6 is an exercise in sheer brutality, but I want to talk about why that's actually a good thing in my review. What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here. Hi, hope you're having a great day. If you can like this video and subscribe if you haven't already, let's see if we can get this video to 5,000 likes. So, growing up, I was a pretty big fan of Armored Core. When these games were coming out back on the PlayStation 1 and the PlayStation 2 specifically, I played them very much. I mean, pretty much every day I'd boot it up and play at least a couple missions. But I'll fully admit, I didn't really grasp it when I was a kid. I didn't understand mech combat and dodging and resource management. I mean, honestly, I played them because they looked cool. But now, growing up, I can definitely appreciate what FromSoftware was trying to achieve with Armored Core even back then. Because yes, you heard me correctly. In case you didn't know, FromSoftware, the people that are incredibly famous for Bloodborne and Elden Ring and of course Dark Souls, they've always had this side project, a very separate franchise of games that have a very dedicated fan base, and I count myself among them. Armored Core is mech combat, but so slow, methodical, so obsessively numbers-based that if you actually take the time to understand Armored Core, the depth is completely mind-blowing. So in Armored Core 6, we are playing as a clone soldier called 621, and you've been dropped onto a planet named Rubicon. Now, this is a complete scorched, desolate wasteland. There was some sort of terrible event that literally burned the planet to hell. Millions of people died. In more normal circumstances, people would probably just abandon it. They'd go to more hospitable parts of the galaxy. But you see, Rubicon has something special about it, called coral. This is both a very important resource because it can be used as fuel or as a literal super weapon, and now corporations are sending armies to try and get the coral back. Everybody is sending in their own chunks of mercenaries, of soldiers, of entire armed battalions with billions of dollars of mechs and gear to kill each other for just a chance to get some of this delicious resource. Now, we're playing as this guy, 621, and when we land here, we're literally nameless. We don't get called Doug or Chuck or something like that. We are just 621. And since we are just a clone soldier with no name or designation, we're not even technically allowed to work here. So the first couple missions are just trying to earn your call sign, looting dead bodies to get your actual badge number so you can begin work under the codename Raven. But after this, you start to try and take up any jobs from the corporations that will pay the most, that will earn you respect. And here's where the really brilliant mission flow of Armored Core 6 takes place. I love that missions are sometimes 5 minutes long or 50 minutes long. Sometimes you're trying to investigate a refinery. Sometimes you're trying to find invisible soldiers that have built stealth mech suits to try and find out why they're defending what seems like an abandoned outpost. There's certain high priority targets which end up being like super bosses that need particular ways to kill. Every mission is so different, but I like it because there is an interesting amount of branching paths. There's technically 5 separate chapters in this game and 59 missions, but you're not going to play all 59 missions in one playthrough. There are times where you have to pick different allegiances, different groups, different corporations, and different fates for Rubicon itself. And to me, that's really cool. But let's talk about what definitely is going to be the make or break aspect of Armored Core 6, the gameplay itself. This game is savage. Now, you're probably thinking, I've played a lot of FromSoftware games. I'm acclimated to their difficulty. This feels like a FromSoftware game, but also very different. In FromSoftware games, a lot of times you can cheese it. If you're playing, Elden Ring or Demon Souls or something like that, there's usually a way where you can kind of fudge the numbers and beat a boss, even if it just comes down to power leveling. But in Armored Core 6, that isn't really an option. You have to legitimately outplay your opponent, and sometimes that can be much easier said than done. This game is tough with a capital T. I have actually spent a lot of time in this game, and even after practicing it, I feel like a very skilled, very experienced player can probably finish Armored Core 6 in about 18 hours. But if you're not really prepared for this, if you're not acclimated to the play style of Armored Core, it's easily going to take you 40 or 50 hours to even get to the last boss. And I don't think most people are even going to be able to beat this game. I mean, I'll say it straight up, 95% of the people that pick this game up are probably not going to be able to beat it. And that's because when it comes to combat, it is very three-dimensional. In this game, there's three different styles of primary damage. There's long range, there's short range, and there's melee. So playing as a mech with a laser sword, you're pretty dang deadly. But when you're going against the opponents, their AI, their speed, their intensity is incredibly tough. Because a lot of times in these fights, the game is very vertical. You got to use your jump jets to get above people. You got to try and get a very punishing strike and get a couple quick melee hits in before you dash away. This game constantly requires a mind-blowing amount of situational awareness. You need to be able to watch for their mistakes and really dig in the second they screw up. And simultaneously, you need to understand when it's time to duck back, or maybe even try and hide behind a pole for a second and use a repair kit to boost your health a bit. This game is tough. Now, it is technically possible to run out of ammunition in this game. It's very rare. It's basically if you just haven't died, sometimes you'll run out of ammo between checkpoints. But what I like about this game is that it feels realistically tough. When you're encountering an enemy mech or trying to take down a bunch of little minions and stuff, while you are exploring these very beautiful environments, from frozen tundras to empty refineries to windswept deserts, I like the mix of big, huge enemy mechs, but also random tiny stuff. Tiny sniper rigs, or times where you're going to see a helicopter that's shooting laser beams. And I like the fact that while you're playing through this, you need to consider your own resources. How many long-range missiles do I have left? How many repair kits? How much fuel is in my jump jets while I'm already in midair trying to dodge an intergalactic space laser beam and stuff like that? I like that Armored Core 6's mission flows are just so perfectly tuned. Now, I'm going to say this, and some Armored Core fans and Dark Souls fans and FromSoftware fans aren't going to like this. Don't be afraid to Google stuff. If you get stuck on a mission for an entire hour, Google how to beat it. I mean, you still have to do it yourself, but this is the kind of game where I feel like try it, try and learn it, try and actually bounce off it a bit before you actually get frustrated and give up. But I think that part of the rewarding aspect of this game is getting deeper, is figuring things out. And going back to the topic of death, one of the things that's great about this game is that it really encourages experimentation. Every time you die, you get a chance to switch around stuff on your AC, your armored core, your mech. So everything you buy in between missions, you get a very big paycheck. So you can buy Gatling guns, better shields, different styles of armor that may give you more defense, more health, more fuel. But here's the thing that actually makes this extra interesting to me is that it really encourages you to buy stuff and stockpile it a bit so that while you are dying, especially against a boss, you constantly need to be swapping out pieces. Let's try and be more long range. Let's try and be more short range. At one point I got stuck on a boss, which I won't show you because it is a big spoiler, and I found out that he was very weak to the plasma gun. And once I figured that out, it completely changed my tactics, my playstyle, in a way that was just so freaking rewarding. I like that this game really gives you a chance to test out different stuff, and whether it works or not comes down to your style of play. Now, this is one of my favorite parts of this. It's going to sound goofy. You can sell guns for the price you bought them at. Now, here's why that's great. There is no actual downside to just spending all of your money every single mission to try out stuff like a laser shotgun or a big huge booster and trying it out, because if it doesn't work, you can sell it off and just buy back the gear that was more of your playstyle. I like the fact that this game really encourages you to experiment, and I think some of my favorite times is when I was outside my comfort zone doing some random arena fights to earn some extra chips to upgrade my character, and while sitting there, I realized there was this whole extra tactical advantage that I hadn't even considered up until that point. I really gotta say that even as a classic fan of Armored Core who grew up playing these games, I'm kind of blown away by the amount of times where you just manage to test something out. There's a new enemy and you discover that they stagger faster or lose their shield if you hit them with a particular elemental type, or you're going against a boss fight that's two separate mechs that are hitting you from separate directions and you realize that actually one is much weaker. There is this interesting realism to Armored Core 6 that, I mean, as a fan, I am just so impressed by. I will say the only tiny bit of this game that I don't love, so I am going to knock it a half of a point. Some of the missions try and be overly scripted. I don't want to give too many examples because they would be big spoilers for the game itself, but some stuff like the stealth missions and stuff, forcing me to sneak through a city in a mech, trying to make me hide in a particular corner and take people out. Like sometimes, and there's only a couple of the 59 missions, it felt like they were trying to do a gimmick, and I don't know if that was to the advantage to the pacing itself. Overall, as a fan, as a lover of FromSoftware, as a person that really was going into this with very high hopes, this surpassed my expectations. If you are willing to play a game that's gonna pound your face into the pavement a little bit, I do encourage you to give Armored Core a shot. Okay, so we've heard some good and some bad, but let's go over to the ratings board and put a big number on it. I am giving Armored Core 6 a 9.5 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, give it a big ol' thumbs up, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming. I played this game on Steam, but I kind of want to get it again on PlayStation 5 or Xbox. I mean, just to see what it looks like, you know? I wonder if this game runs on Steam Deck. The idea of a portable Armored Core, that just sounds too good to believe. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, you know, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.